Hey, film friends, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film, a podcast where we break down movies with some of my closest friends and special guests. Now, today I'm sort of solo on this one. Sometimes you're just a man alone in a house with a specter around you. But I feel like I got my guy Steven riding shotgun today with me. He's back in the director's seat for not one, but two pictures in 2025. Here's the first. Guys, it's Steven Soderbergh's Presence. Okay, guys. Oh, man, we got to do a lot today. We have got to. I thought about having like this mega episode in which I was going to review both of Steven Soderbergh's films from this year, and that would be Presence, which we're doing today, and Black Bag, which is a spy thriller kind of thing going on. But they're just really, really different things. And so I think if I'm going to do that other one, I'll do it as a separate episode. And it is, I'm told, an excellent film. I'm going to be viewing it very shortly, and I'm very excited. But for today, I think I've got enough thoughts about this one that we can kind of tackle it all on its own. So, I always start with plot, do some themes, we'll do some pros and cons, and then this time I'm going to give you a little extra special bit. If you stay to the end, I want to talk about the ending, the twist, the special interpretation, and I want to kind of hash through some questions about it, whether it works or it doesn't. I need you guys' feedback on it, but I have my own thoughts and kind of where I've landed, and that does affect my score, my FOF rating, which I'll also give you. So that's kind of the lay of the land. That's where we're going. I do want to start with plot, as I usually do, but I do think we need to talk about the director. So just real quick, one sentence summary. I would say the plot is a ghost story from the first person perspective of the ghost. So, that was Soderbergh's note. He went to David Koepp, who we'll talk about more in a second, and he said he wanted to do a ghost story from the perspective of a ghost. He wanted to shoot it all in one house. Koepp grabs it, fleshes it out, and creates this family of four and all these interfamily dynamics, and then we get the film as we have it, Presence. So I guess the thing, I want to say a couple things about each of those two guys. First, Koepp, this is not this dude's first rodeo. And I suspect if you love or hate or kind of where you land on this film, it's partially going to depend on how you feel about the screenplay. David Koepp is the man behind Jurassic Park, the first Mission Impossible, Panic Room, other Fincher flicks, Raimi's Spider-Man, and he also did some lesser-known stuff that he either directed himself or wrote on, which is kind of more reminiscent of that. So I'm thinking of like a couple Kevin Bacon flicks like Stir of Echoes, and what's that one? They Should Have Left, I think he did a couple years back. So he's been in the stew, he's been in the mix for a while. My point is that this is not his first rodeo, and he just teamed up with Steven himself for Kimmy, which is the Zoe Kravitz flick, like this sort of techie thriller during COVID from a couple years back that just kind of quietly dropped on Max, even though it was really awesome. So these guys have been doing it. Soderbergh, this is his like 35th or 36th feature film. The guy's been in the mix for a long, long time. If he were an NBA player, he would be a volume shooter. This guy's getting them up. He's putting work in, and they're so different. You guys, if you've seen my 80s film, I rivaled his debut, which was a Sundance breakout called Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which I think is one of the best indie films ever, maybe the best, like right at the time that Sundance was sort of starting to burgeon out and blossom and grow. But a film that kind of has some touch points with this one thematically. Voyeurism, being a fly on the wall in intense conversations, sort of spying or overhearing what's happening. It's here. So mad respect for this dude. He's always out there trying stuff. He's always pushing the limits of what cameras and work and all these sorts of things can do. You saw that with his basketball film he did for Netflix a few years ago called High Flying Bird. Okay, so that's those guys. I know some of you guys are like, can you talk about the movie, please? But I do feel like that stuff does matter. That's the plot, right? This family moves into an abandoned house, only it's not abandoned. There's no people in it, but there is a presence in it. And we are the audience that presence, just sort of navigating these rooms and these spaces with this group. So thematically, it's a movie about surveillance, voyeurism. I talked about it. But what it's really teasing at is all of these under the surface issues in a family that leads to a grander mystery, which kind of unfurls in the final 10 minutes or so of the picture. So I would say, we can talk about the screenplay more, but I would say that it's at least smart in this way, is that it hints at all of these inner familial dynamics without fully telegraphing exactly what they are. So interestingly, like, people may say, Nick, is this a scary movie? To me, the answer is absolutely not. There's not jump scares. Is it eerie in places? A few. But the actual horror in this movie is the family. It's not the specter. It's not the ghost. It's these people. It's this dad who, kind of played second fiddle to his wife and now is kind of reticent to stay in bed with her, so to speak, figuratively and literally, when some other things are going awry. Then there's a mom who's like kind of this like tiger, go get 'em lawyer, I believe, who may be involved in some white collar crap, and is way too doting on the son. The son is a jock, a star swimmer, but he's also kind of a dick and just treats other people like crap, is a bit of a maybe nascent bully. And then you got the sister, or the daughter, the youngest, the apple of her father's eye, a little estranged with the mother, and is dealing with a recent death due to a drug overdose of a close friend named Nadia. So that's the setup. That's actually not spoilery, because that's kind of the archetypal setup of what's going on. But what's cool about it is that the actual horror, again, as I said, it is in that. It's actually in the interplay of them. Half the time we're just the fly on the wall, and that is in fact what the ghost is as well. So if we want to talk about pros, I think we gotta get into the below the line stuff in terms of sound design, cinematography, things like that. So what I find impressive, probably most impressive about Presence, is that it's this super simple storytelling, which is juxtaposed with this really complicated craft. So let's just get into the nitty gritty of that, okay? So each sequence, or I should say each scene, is a single long take. It's a oneer. So the only cuts that you actually see throughout this entire movie are these black screen interludes. It's cut to blacks. So, Soderbergh's famous for like splitting screens and doing all this other stuff, but he actually went for black screen interludes. And I was listening to an interview with him where he said this is crazy, I didn't pick this up, but the length of them, the length of how long the black screen is up, corresponds to the length of time passing between sequences in real life. So if you get a longer black screen, it's actually further on down the line. If it's real quick, it's maybe a couple hours later. So I think that's pretty cool. When he was asked about why he did it, he just thought it was the most natural way to transition between different things, because there's no actual other cuts in the movie. It's just a roving camera. And Soderbergh talked about how he was the man behind the camera. He wore the sort of like martial arts shoes where they're like rubber and slippers almost, so you get these rubber grips on the ground, but you don't actually make much sound, because this dude, if you watch, he's dervishing and spinning and going up and down stairs to be this like I said, this voyeuristic fly on the wall. He's doing all of that again without edits, blocking, staging, cuts, like none of it. It's just on the screen. And so he has to actually kind of nail it. So he got the shoes. The camera, he said, is a Sony A7. I'm definitely not your like camera guy, but I think the point is that he wanted it to be DIY but look really professional. And I think in that sense, he actually is extremely successful. So you could say what you want about the writing or the acting, the performances. If you feel like it's like too raw, too student filmy, I heard one critic say, like, I think you at least have to acknowledge that it looks very professional. Like, for instance, there's a lens choice. Like, most of the stuff he shoots in, like, real wide. Again, I'm not your camera guy, but, like, it's real wide stuff. And then you can almost see it kind of like fish eyeing. Like, at the edges of the frame. And then there's a sequence that gets very intense near the end where you actually see it almost makes like a convex image of the main characters who are in frame in a way that is like sort of destabilizing, which I just think is awesome. So he's doing all of this stuff. I think that's probably the greatest stuff about the film. And it's all the more impressive that he executes it in basically 84 minutes. So, yeah. All right. Now, in the spirit of it being 84 minutes, we don't need an 84-minute podcast. So let's get going on. So that's the pros. Cons. This is, I think, where the rubber's going to really meet the road for you as the viewer. And honestly, I really I could understand a half star or I don't know about a half star, but I could understand a 1-star version of this viewing, thinking that the writing and acting is just and I could understand at least a 4-star, 4.5, because of just how impressively technical it is. But I will say, this is where, for me, these are the questions I was asking myself. One, is there anyone really likable in this movie? And it's the issue with there's no real likability of the characters is not like, look, it's in something like Bodies, or something like highly satirical, the unlikability of the characters is actually sort of baked in. Or that movie last year, It's What's Inside. That's baked in. Not liking the people is baked into the storytelling. It actually makes it more efficacious, more, it goes down like sugar. So, but here you want to kind of like some of them, and it's hard to like any of them. You can kind of feel sorry for the dad, but do you really respect him? Lucy Liu is doing a great job of being pretty hateable, and stuff like that. So I think that's one thing. And I guess the question, I think, to really put the David Koepp on trial here is the writing great or is it awful? Is this a gimmick in search of a story, or is it a cool gimmick that gets wedded to an even cooler story? And because I think you have to say that the characters, whatever they are, they're definitely archetypal. Like I just got done saying it, right? Like the cocky bullying jock, the sort of withdrawn, emo-ish, druggy daughter, the mom who's, just a little too type A and who knows what she's into, and the dad who's just kind of like trying to stitch it all together. And then because it's all oneers, you get acting performances which are supposed to appear more naturalistic, but I do think you get some sort of histrionics where they're like dialed up, particularly the son character. I just don't think his performance is that good. That would be my dig. I actually think that the writing in general is pretty good. I just don't, when he gets hysterical, I don't really buy it. And I think the weakest character of the film is the friend character, who kind of comes center stage. His friend who and the daughter have a little something going on. And I just think he's a pretty poor actor, in my humble opinion. But I don't think that's a failure of writing, because I actually think, well, I don't want to get into spoilers, but some of the things he says are the kinds of things that I think someone would say, giving those sorts of things in real life. So I do think it's archetypal. But I actually think that the writing might be pretty solid, but some of the performances are a little up and down for me. That's what I would say. So, and I do think the lack of likability is to the film's detriment to a certain degree. I don't know how you change that in such a naturalistic picture, but maybe you give the daughter a scene where she's a little more winning, or the dad. I'm just not sure. But I think the reason they're so unlikable is because the movie is supposed to be simmering, boom. I think that's kind of Soderbergh and Koepp's intention. And it does a pretty good job at that. But I will leave that to you. My guess is that's where I'm going to hear the most feedback from everybody by far. Okay, now the moment we've been waiting for. Sorry, guys, I'm kicking stuff over here. I'm so excited. Let's talk about the ending. All right, if you don't want anything spoiled about this movie, and I would argue you shouldn't, then fast forward or go watch it. Come back, pause this bad boy, and play it, and let's talk it through. Okay, so stated simply, early on in the film, we're not sure who this presence is. Okay. And what happens is, this is my take on the ending. What happens is we are first sort of tipped that it might be, in fact, Nadia, who is the friend who apparently died of a drug overdose. And the reason why that tip actually seems to work is because we watch this ghost sort of sitting in the girl's closet and watching her, sort of, Chloe's her name, sort of sitting in her closet and watching her, like helping her clean up her books, like taking interest in her life, right? So the idea is like, oh, if this is Nadia, maybe she's just come back, she hasn't quite been able to move on, blah, blah, blah. There are two bits of information that matter that we get from kind of like a medium who comes into the house after the ghost sort of first acts up. The first is that, and these I think play really key into the ending. The first is that the ghost may not know who it is and why it's here, right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially the one thing. The second is that the ghost may be out of time. In other words, past, present, none of that matters in that realm where this ghost exists. So, hint, hint, that's probably going to come to play. Okay. So again, the ghost may not know who it is and what it's doing here. And it may also be out of time. So what literally happens in the ending is that friend who I just got done saying I think was a pretty shitty acting performance, now that we're in spoilers, I can say what I wanted to say, which is that his whole thing about like, it's all up to you, baby, you're in control, but really he's in control and manipulating through emotions and stuff. All of that stuff I think is actually pretty convincing writing for how a sociopath would groom someone or a serial killer. So I actually think it's pretty effective. I just don't buy his interpretation of it very well. But then again, maybe that was hard to do. I'm not sure. So anyway, it turns out that these two girls didn't die from ODing. Well, sure, they OD'd, but they OD'd because of this dude who then suffocated them with saran wrap or whatever. And guess what? Now he has seduced Chloe and is about to do the same thing. So he drugs Tyler, I think his name's Tyler, the boy, downstairs, goes with Ambien in his drink, goes upstairs, drugs her, and as she's passing out, he starts trying to do these sorts of things. Now, there are several parts in the story where the ghost gets upset, and it's like he can't quite touch reality, so it kind of shakes the frame. There's weird ghost rules that, go all the way back to like Swayze and Ghost, which is like he can touch objects but not people, although in Ghost, it turns out he can touch people once he gets fired up enough in the subway, but like, you can't, that's the thing about this ghost is he can't, he or she, oh, we're in spoilers. He can't touch the actual person, but he's able to like knock a glass off her end table earlier. So he witnesses this drugging of this girl and for some unexplained reason doesn't knock the drink out of his hand or her hand. So he darts downstairs, finds Tyler drugged and out, and basically swims, flies into his ear, and makes a sound. Tyler wakes up on a mad rage, runs upstairs, jumps through the window with the friend, and they both fall to their death. And that's the ending. And then as we see kind of like a little, not post-credits, because before credits, but the epilogue is essentially the mom looks in this mirror, which had been like old and portrayed time. Tyler's image pops up, and we realize in a flash that the ghost all along was Tyler, that it was in fact the son, out of time, caught in some sort of time loop, and who had come back for the purpose of saving his sister. So here's the problem with that. Okay. There's a paradox because presumably she would have had to die in order for him to know to come back and kill the dude in the first place, right? So she didn't die. So then why would he come back? So we get like he's caught in this infinite loop of coming back to save her, and she gets saved so she never dies, which wouldn't have had to have him come back in the first place. So you get in this place where it becomes problematic. So look, can you buy that a ghost can exist outside of time and then that's okay? I would argue you could, because there's a very clear historical antecedent in this. It's called, wait for it, the Terminator. Like the Terminator, am I saying the Terminator is a better film than Presence? No, I am in fact not. If you want to go look at my James Cameron ranked movies, you'll see how highly I speak of both Terminators. The original is a DIY masterpiece, but that is essentially what happens, is that John Connor sends his mom from the future back to sleep with Reese so that he is born in the future, right? So if you actually start doing the math on all of that, it really breaks down. Like, you have to think of time almost as a circle, because why would he have come back in the first place? He would have never been bored if it had proceeded without them hooking up. So he had to come back from the future in order for them to hook up, blah, blah, blah. So you end up in this like infinite regression. So look, if you can buy that, then you can buy this, I think. Now, even if you buy that, you may still have some other issues with the fact that this ghost cannot move people at all. But he tries to like hit things and it just shakes, but he can't do anything. But yet he's somehow able to fly into his ear. And then when the son wakes up, who by the way was just drugged with Ambien, he's able to like charge upstairs, doesn't confront the boyfriend, the friend. He just charges him out the window. And it's like, why wasn't there a struggle? Why was he like, what the hell are you doing, my sister? Why does any of that happen, right? And so is that a problem for you guys? Here's my take on that. I think that the ghost finally got so agitated that he was able to rouse the son character into action. In other words, because he was himself, whatever he buzzed into his ear in that key moment, or like he was able to imbue his consciousness with what this thing really was, because he had been voyeurizing it, watching this friend do all this terrible stuff for minutes, for days, weeks, months, and he was able to rouse him up. And I guess, and that's why he just charged and went right for the window. I think that's my take on it. The question still remains how, like I said, how he knew to go after it and take out the boy. But I looked at that as, I guess, like I'm saying, the ghost finally reached full awareness of its purpose. Because remember, earlier in the movie, it says he doesn't exactly know why he's here. It's like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here. I got to take this freaking guy out before he kills more girls. And then it acts. And then, of course, we get the ending. He shows up in the mirror, and now the mom, who is hysterical because she had this like borderline obsessive relationship with her son in the first place, is able to sit there and go, oh my gosh, he came back to protect her. He was the presence all along. And so you actually get this sort of like familial love note. I would argue that those ways of interpreting the ending of this movie actually work. Like, it's actually okay. I can live with it within the language of the film itself. I do not think that, here's my critique. I've already given you my acting critiques, but I also don't think it lands with the pathos that it could, because you just don't love these people that much. And so when this real a-hole brother finally does something cool and really self-sacrificial, it just lands. Like, I washed over it as a plot point. I didn't feel it deeply as a human being. That's what I would say about the ending. So the film, in some senses, never gets away from its gimmickness to me. I don't think that's a word, but you follow me. So yeah, that's kind of my conclusion. That's my thoughts about Presence. I do think it was a gimmick in search of a mystery, in a sense. I think the central mystery is not as impressive as the oneers, as the production, as the twist itself. But I still really enjoyed myself. And I think that, it's like, I'm just glad that Steven goes for it, man. That's what I got. So out of 5 stars, I started right at 4. And the more I thought about this stuff, I thought if they could have written it a little neater, made the characters a little bit more likable, punched up that mystery so it really landed, maybe we're in the 4.5 categories status there. But I'm going to dip a little below 4 because of some of the criticisms that you just heard from me. And I'm going to give this a 3.9 out of 5 stars, which is still a good score. I think it is worth your time to watch if you like these sorts of movies. And even if you're not scared, I never think you're going to be bored. And there is some stuff where it's like, wow, this ghost sure knows how to get into just the right spots, so we always get to catch the conversations, like little camera tricks that are fun. But hey, I think this is a good way to come out of the gate, and we could do far worse for, Dumpuary and the post-Oscars hangover. So 3.9 out of 5. Let me know your thoughts. Did you watch it? Do you have a different interpretation of the ending? Does that jive with what you're thinking? Hey, I just thank you guys for coming along for this ride and for checking it out. I'm going to keep pumping out more stuff here, and we're going to be going great places together with Furman on Film in the days ahead. And so, to conclude, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. Stay Furman, friends.